Hey everybody. So I'm on the trail and it's a glorious, beautiful day. It's in the 80s. I'm kind of wearing the wrong outfit. I'm wearing corduroys and a long sleeve top, but nonetheless, with a muddy foot from getting stuck in a mud pile, I'm moving forward and I'm going to encourage you to do the same. And what I want to talk about is that it is okay to be messy. It's okay to move through your muck. It's okay to look at the icky stuff in your life. And it's okay to make new decisions about where you want to take yourself in your life. Now, before, I have to say that in my youth, I had a focus. And my focus was dance, ballet, modern dance, jazz, character, tap, point, swing, salsa, partnering, Spanish dance. There were all these different types of dancing. And I had to study all of them because that was part of the curriculum. It was part of the program. But the foundation of dance and what I studied, the foundation was ballet. It was having your arms extend a certain way. It was your turnout in your legs and your feet. It was, understanding how to balance your body between point A and point B, how to walk across the floor, how to run across the floor, how to leap across the floor. And each phase of dance, specifically with ballet, there were levels. You're at level 1, level 2, level 3, etc., until you advanced. And there was the Russian method, there was the Cecchetti Russian method, there was the Balanchine method, there was modern dance, the Martha Graham method, the Twyla Tharp method, the Merce Cunningham method. You get what I'm saying? So there's always somebody that's going to lead a certain program or certain depth or understanding. And in that dance world, there was a certain protocol of you need to weigh this much and you need to fit in the costumes. So there was a maximum of most dancers are going to fall in the range of as an adult, as 98 pounds to let's say 120 pounds. And that range is so that you can fit into the costumes. Because if you were larger than those sizes, they didn't have the costumes to fit you. So you needed to stay within that range. Now, surely every once in a while, maybe you had to have something altered a little bit. But for the most part, what I'm trying to say is there's a structure. There are parameters, there are boundaries that if you want to be a professional ballet or modern dancer, you need to look a certain way and be a certain size and fit into certain costumes that the Corps de Ballet and the company own those costumes, and they're going to put on the same performances every year for Nutcracker and Swan Lake and Les Sylphides and the modern dance repertoire, etc. And if you wanted to take that part, you needed to fit the costume. You also needed to have the technique. You needed to have the showcase personality to play that role. And we were all learning in different levels of our acquiring knowledge. So I might be really good in technique with modern dance, but I might struggle in technique on point, for example. So I could have a strength in one dance area and a weakness in another. And you're going to school, you're training, and you're becoming more proficient within that genre. You're becoming more proficient within that niche, okay? And then you get to a certain level of mastery. And if somebody said, you know, pas de bourrée, relevé, jeté, grand jeté, you know, 32 pirouettes, whatever, like, you know the language, you know what those words mean, and you could perform. Like, snap your finger, you know what those things are because you've mastered those poses, you've mastered those particular sequences, and you could do that in your sleep. Now, those requirements and that training, you know, required a tremendous amount of self-discipline. It required waking up early in the morning, showing up at the dance studio, in addition taking all your academic classes. It required going back to the dance studio, rehearsals in the dance studio, going home and watching VHS tapes of the performances and, you know, learning your part. It required reading, it required vocabulary, and then you had your regular academic homework. So the point is, if you wanted to master it, you were either all in or you made up excuses. And if you made up excuses, the teachers were going to point you out. They were going to point out that you didn't do your homework. They weren't going to give you the part if you didn't demonstrate that you could do the part. So there's a level of competition in the dance world. You learn that certain people are going to get the A+ parts and other people are going to get the B parts. And the majority of people are going to stay in the C realm. And there's going to be a few D's and F's. But the majority of people are in the C range. And you had to make a determination of what you were going to do and what you were willing to do to stand out, so that you would get the attention of the dance teachers, that you would get the attention of the judges, that you would maybe choose unusual music for your solo piece instead of playing it safe. The point is, there's this level of growing up, training, and becoming a master. And it takes time. It's not like you just walk in and you're perfect. No, it takes grueling hours, long days, sitting at the ballet bar, stretching and doing foot exercises, and going home and laying in those same positions, like in straddles or your head to your knees, and having somebody like your brother or your father lay his back on yours to push you down even further so that your head is on your knees. Like, using whatever means were necessary to push yourself, that you could get a little bit further, a little bit more comfortable with moving forward. And I say this to say that we don't know what we're up against until we get there. Like, you're training, you're at the ballet bar, you're in the center of the room doing the center of the room exercises, you're doing the floor exercises, you're doing pirouettes and turns and spins across the floor. But you don't know until you know of when that moment is that you get picked, that you get chosen, that you are being asked to play that role, to dance that dance. And then when you get that role, then there's another level of being able to handle the role, being able to get into the character of the person that you're playing, the understanding the play, understanding how you're relating to the other people and the characters of the play, of the ballet. There's so much, but you don't know all that until you get to the next level. And then you level it up to the next level. And then you level it up to the next level. And then you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm here. And now there's a gap between where you are here and like up here. Like, there's always a gap of where you want to go to the next level. But you've got to master this level here before you can take the next level and jump up. And sometimes we get to that spot and we're like, this is where I'm at. And we get stuck. And I use this dance example to illustrate that it was a process that took years. It took years to get to that level. Like I started out age 3. And then going to all these ballet classes and dance classes and then more private lessons, and then, going to Peabody, and then going to Baltimore School for the Arts, and then going to Baltimore Ballet, and going to Washington Ballet, and dancing in modern dance troupes, and, doing workshops that taught me other traits, and acting workshops, and, communication classes, and reading books, and studying different topics that were related to the time period of the ballet that we were doing, or the play that we were in the play. So what I'm saying is there's so much to it. There's a depth to it. But when you go to a ballet performance and you see Nutcracker, you just see the dancers in the pretty costumes and you're like, wow, that was a great performance. But you're not seeing all the background behavior. You're not seeing the backstage behavior. You're not seeing those dancers get home from school and take their shoes and socks and stockings off and literally put their feet in a bucket of ice and tend to the blistered toes and the broken toe and the broken toenail and tape their toenail back on. Like, you're not seeing all that. You're just seeing the surface performance level of everybody looking pretty and in unison in costume. You're not seeing the backstage, the background behavior. And I highlight this because this is what's going on in life with how, as adults, we master certain things. And I could say the same exact thing about yoga. I studied yoga, I was a student of yoga, and then I read the books. I understood, and practiced the meditation. I practiced the asanas. I practiced different types of yoga until I selected the type that I wanted to focus on. And that was Ashtanga, the power yoga. And I got all into that. And I still did Iyengar for alignment and understanding the poses. And I did softer versions of like flow and just gentle yoga for when I just wanted to chill out and not be like, go, go, go. So the point is, there's this repertoire, just like in the dance world and the yoga world. I studied chair yoga and soft gentle yoga and power yoga and Pilates and power Pilates and fitness training and weight training. And each level of these things, it's like you're gathering another set of credentials. You're gathering another set of mastery. But before you become a master, you have to be a student. And when you start out as a student, sometimes you suck. You're terrible at it. And you have to learn how to, turn out your foot in that angle, in that position until you get it. And other times you have to, get your position until you refine that particular strategy and that particular pose. And then after that, you're going to once again level up and then see how, okay, well, if I'm at this level, I'm on the floor and my legs are on the floor, then what happens when I raise my legs and I'm using the lower part of my abs and I'm challenging myself to even a more strenuous level. So what I'm getting at is there's always levels. You could be here, you could be in the intermediate, you could be basic, you could be intermediate, you can be advanced. Basic, intermediate, advanced. And then the same thing happens with health. And then it's like, okay, maybe when you're a child, your mom is making you your lunch and she's making your dinner. And then at some point there's a part where she's like, okay, you can make a sandwich. I'm going to let you learn how to make your own peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And then you learn how to make a sandwich. And then you're making and packing your lunch. And then, you learn how to do your laundry. And, now the responsibility is on you. If you want to wear clothes and wear them at the level you're wearing them at, you're going to have to do the work of washing your laundry. So again, it's all of these things, like mom's doing it, and then I learn how to do it. And then maybe I mess up and I shrink something or I stain something, and I have to ask for mom's help, go back to the basics, and then mom says, well, you need to do this, and then you level up to intermediate and you're doing it on your own, and then you become an advanced laundry expert where you know how to handle your laundry, and you know how to put, the whites with the whites and the darks with the darks and the rugs with the rugs, and you're not going to mix them together. And the point is that you become a master at that skill. And then with food, mom makes food, then you learn how to make sandwiches, and then as you become an adult and you're living in your own apartment, you're like, I need to learn how to cook. And maybe at first you go out to eat and you're paying somebody else to cook for you, and then you're like, that's getting expensive. Maybe I need to learn how to grocery shop and make a salad. How do I make a one-pot meal? How do I make a smoothie, etc.? And then you start to find out what works for you. And then you come into balance of how you're feeding yourself, how you're taking care of yourself. And then with your career, for me, fitness was always like my foundation, and it was always part of my career. But then when you get injured, your life takes a totally different turn. And that car accident, I couldn't teach 35 classes a week with a broken, body. So then you're like, okay, well, what am I going to do in the meantime? So then you're studying new topics. And I'm studying, psychotherapy. I'm studying life coaching. I'm studying health coaching. I'm studying all these other topics because I have a broken leg. So what I'm getting at is you could stay stuck here and be like, oh, I have a broken leg, I can't do anything. Or you could continue to grow your skills and level up in a totally different way, given that season, given that time, given the circumstances. And so I encourage you that wherever you are and whatever you are trying to accomplish right now, maybe you're just trying to make a decision about what's next. And maybe writing down a list of what are your positive traits that are, that you're good at, and what are your negative traits, and what are traits that you're willing to learn new skills over. And then maybe take a class, or do something online, or buy a book. Take an action step in that area to get acquainted with that new topic and see if that's the direction you want to go in. It may be that you discover, like, I don't like this at all. Like, I thought I was going to get into like cyber back-end, like website stuff or whatever. I hated it. It was not for me. The point is, I took a turn and I investigated the possibility. When I got into that class, I realized it wasn't for me and I didn't like it. So I could pivot and I could say, I don't want to invest any more time and money in this. I know this is not for me. But it's a hard no. Like, I know, like, I don't want to do that. And then I pivot and then I say, okay, well, what else do I want to do? And sometimes the pivot is to do something completely different and opposite and not even related to a career. So one of my most recent pivots was just getting back to doing things that are artistic. And so a friend of mine and I, we started paint by numbers, and we'd get together on Sunday and we would paint a paint by numbers kit. And it's so relaxing and it really helps the brain-body connection. And it helped me to just be in the moment. Like, painting helped me to be in the moment and turn off all those other things and get still, but like be in the stillness with the act and art of painting. And then when you see all those little specks of color come together and they become a pretty decent looking painting. And even though I followed paint by numbers, right? It wasn't like I drew it from scratch. Like, I'm following somebody else's order, somebody else's structure, but I could put my own personality on it after I saw like the main scope of the picture. And then I might change the paint color out and be like, you know what? I'm going to make this here darker green and this one here lighter green because I like that better. Or the door is pink and I don't want a pink door. I'm going to make a red door. So what I'm saying is you can change it up and you're still staying within the construct, but you're adding your own flair. You're adding your own personality. And then by doing that with that one task of like paint by numbers, then I got the inspiration, like, okay, I'm now ready to tackle some other difficult things in my life that I have been putting off. And some of those things involved cluttering and moving things around. And mind you, just to give you some background, I had a flood in 2024 and a lot of my stuff was boxed up for about 5 months. And then I moved back into my apartment and just quickly put it together, and then still had a bunch of things still in boxes and still hadn't really unpacked and made decisions on those things. And I gave myself a year to just kind of grieve my dad's death and, you know, come out of a season of going to school full time for my master's. And I just needed a year to just focus on self-care and like resetting my body and coming into a balance again, because going for your master's when you're going full time, there is no balance. Like, that is like crazy making. I don't know if you've ever done that, but part time, good, but full time, it's much. It's a lot. And you know, to come to the realization of like, what do you need to make your life work? And when I came to that assessment, then I started to be willing to make those other changes. But sometimes you have to get to a baseline of calm and serenity, like the sound of this water. Like, you need to get to a baseline of serenity and calm before you're ready to like take on that next big obstacle, that next big jump. And the mind may have already worked out the details on paper. You might have written out your plans, like, this is my next phase. I'm going to create this program. I'm going to finish writing my book. I'm going to do this. And that may be in the works, but like, you to like finally and formally declare it and like have the program set up, like you've got it done, that's another thing. But sometimes it comes in clips, like, here's a whole bunch of ideas, boom, you write it down, you capture it. Okay, here's the next phase, okay, boom, you capture it. But you've got to connect all those sequences together and be like, okay, now I'm really ready to just be like, boom, this is what I'm doing now. But that's what I'm saying about mastery. It takes time, and you need to be in alignment with your environment. You need to be in alignment with yourself. And most importantly, you need to be in alignment with God. Seek first the kingdom of heaven and all his righteousness, and all these things shall come to you and be added to you. So Matthew 6:33, there is a foundational spiritual principle to all this. And when you can start and have that as your main focus, your life goes so much smoother. And I can tell you that in my younger years, I was more motivated by external things or the whim or the excitement of the moment. And now I'm more motivated by serenity and peace and balance. And how can I do these things and have a life that works, instead of being totally extreme over here and being totally stressed out, or totally extreme over here and not having enough of what I need, and, you know, like being too lackadaisical or too disorganized because there's not enough structure. So there's like a balance between having structure and having freedom, and like being in that flow between the both, and having time for work and having time for rest and play. Which brings me to, I'm on this trail, I'm walking on this beautiful day because we've had so many days of, I'm going to put this down for a second. We've had so many days of snow and like just bad weather that it's just nice to like know that some coconut water, know that warm days like this are just like, you know. And so I could sit there and justify, hey, I'm going to sit at the computer, and no, I am justifying that I'm going to be outside in the sun on a glorious day like today, and I will do my computer work in the evening. So that's where I'm saying, when you sometimes you're going to have to make decisions about what's more important, daylight and getting your vitamin D in, or sitting in front of the computer. Because I can sit in front of the computer for a couple hours in the evening, but I'm not always going to have a glorious day like today. So there is something to be said about finding balance. So my encouragement to you is to find a way to find balance in your life. And when you find a way to find balance in your life, then you need to hold boundaries around maintaining that balance in your life so that you maintain your structure of being productive and achieving a certain level of autonomy and production and performance, in the sense that your life works. But when you are in a relationship with someone who deprives you of your basic needs, somebody that is not encouraging and not supporting you and being difficult or challenging, and sometimes when you're in a relationship like that, and I know some of you have, as I have, it not only does it challenge your current reality, but it also challenges your future reality, because that person affecting you in that present moment is also affecting you in your future moment. Because if you're still stuck, not realizing that this is not a healthy relationship, and you're thinking that it is a healthy relationship when it isn't, you're going to have to still take the fall when you get the realization that this is not what you thought it was going to be. And when you get that realization that, I just need to sit another second, that was a really steep incline. So when you get that realization that that person was not your person, that person was taking you away from your balance, that person was actually putting you in danger and your future you in danger. The problem is we don't always see all those parts in the moment, and until they happen. Okay, so sharing that with myself, when I was in this relationship with someone that I thought was going in a certain direction that was positive, I thought it was positive, and then I discovered it was negative. And then I went through a period of extreme trauma, negativity, like craziness with his drug addiction and in and out of recovery and that whole mess. You start to reevaluate your standards, your morals, your priorities, and you communicate them. Like for me, I was communicating them even more directly because of all the circumstances that were happening to him that were also happening to me because of my association with him. And when I drew that line and I was like, look, it's obvious to me that you're going down this path and I'm not going down that path. I'm going this way. So if you want to join me this way, like, this is what needs to happen. And if you want to go down this way, like, I'm not going that way. I'm not going down a path of drug addiction. I'm not going down a path of, being at the whim of whatever nonsense, spirits want to take him. There was a defining moment of I will no longer deal with the insanity that you're allowing in your life. I'm putting an end to it right here and saying, good luck to you. I'll talk to you from a distance, but I can't walk side by side with you if this is what you're choosing. So sometimes we really have to have those uncomfortable, conversations about, this is it. I'm not going that way. You're going this way, and that's fine for you, but I'm going this way. And for him, it didn't turn out well. He died as a result of his addiction. And, we can only support somebody so much in their insanity. And then there just comes a time where there's just a dividing line. I'm not playing that crazy game anymore. I don't think you should either, but you've got to come to that understanding on your own. And I hope that you do. And I'm going to pray for you that you get it. But if you don't get it, I'm not going to live that type of lifestyle that you want to live in your current you. Like, I'm moving into my future me. And this current you is not representative of God. It's not what God wants for you. Like, you're living in wicked ways. And I'm putting like a dividing line here. Like, I'm not walking this wicked path that you're on. And I'm going to believe in the possibility for you to be over here. But you've got to make some choices in your mind and in your circumstances. And you've got to put yourself in better environments with better people in order to get the results that are over here. So sometimes it's sad because we have to let go of people that we love, that we had hoped that we were going to have a certain outcome with, and we don't. And sometimes they die. Sometimes the relationship dies and we just, like, that person just moves out of our life and we just don't see them again. And sometimes that's hard when we're leveling up and other people around us are not. They're still stuck in this, I'm just going to call it high school mentality of, like, they're just happy with the status quo down here in, like, kindergarten land. And, you know, I'm now up this master's level of where I'm focusing my attention, and I don't want to play in the sandbox with kindergarten people. And I want to be here. And I want to be around other people that are at the business level and the master's level, because that's where our brains are. Like, that's where we're moving towards. We want to be at this level. It doesn't mean we can't bring it down to a base level that everybody can understand. But people that are at this kindergarten level, like, until they move up to the, you know, intermediate level, the advanced level, the master's level, like, they're just on a different page. And you can come down for a workshop, or you can come down for a Zoom meeting and you can explain things to them. But if they're not willing to do the homework, if they're not willing to do the background hidden behavior, like the dancer experience that I explained, that requires discipline. It requires commitment. It requires isolation. It requires, like, respect, self-respect. It requires diligence. It requires study. And you're not going to get that by playing in a sandbox with other kindergartners. You know, you need to level up, you know, people, places, and things. So, I'm going to stop here.